This conference will now be recorded.
Page 3 of 13, I saw a typo. Lanta, the meeting minutes, it's A-L-A-N-T, it should be Lanta. Doesn't look like anyone has any other comments. Does anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
One abstain.
Oh, one abstain. All right. Greg, do you want to do a roll call? Oh, we did a roll.
Meeting rules.
Okay. The motion passes. Meeting rules?
For an orderly meeting wherein all attendees may be fully able to participate, we ask that you adhere to the following rules. Please mute your microphone or telephone to avoid background noise that may cause interference in the meeting and make it more difficult for others to hear. Staff may mute the microphones of remote attendees if needed. Public questions and comments will be taken at periodic intervals throughout the agenda. We will start with no time limits, but the Planning Commission chairman may impose a time limitation if there are many questions or if the meeting is running short on time. For in-person attendees, please raise your hand to be recognized, then move to the podium when directed and state your name, address, and comment or question. Please turn on the podium microphone before speaking and turn it off when done. For remote attendees, the chat box features will be active throughout the meeting. If you have a comment or question, please type your full name and address in the chat box. When you are recognized and so directed, please unmute your microphone and state your comment or question. Mute your microphone when done. For those who are accessing the meeting by phone only, staff will periodically ask for caller comments and unmute all callers. Callers must identify their name and address prior to making a comment. Your cooperation and adherence to these rules will ensure an orderly and respectful meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. We're on agenda item number 4, comp plan update. Dave Manhart, I'll let you take it.
Yes, so we had our comprehensive plan workshop meeting Tuesday. We went over finalized transportation goals and strategies, started discussing land use. So we presented the future land use plan. The next steps coming out of that are we have to get the presentation online to share with the public. And we're also working on a interactive map that will get to the boards for comment. That way you can kind of zoom in, well, you can zoom in and look at specific areas of the township. It was kind of hard to see, so it'll give you the opportunity to really get to see some of the land uses we're proposing and where they are. So that should be out tomorrow. For the public, stay tuned and pay attention to the website. We'll have the presentation up, and we have a series of open houses coming up at the schools and at Parkland, at the Covered Bridge Park for Fall Fest. We'll be there with the table.
Thanks, Dave. Agenda item number 5, subdivision review. We have 2 projects on the agenda this month. First one is the Parkland School District New Operations Center. Greg, I'll let you do the staff presentation.
Thank you. This is an application to further develop the property located at 2619 Stadium Drive. The plan proposes to raise an existing structure and construct a 2-story, 39,295 square foot building, 90 parking spaces, and associated stormwater management facilities on the 8.70 acre property. The property is served by public water and is zoned rural residential RR2. Parkland School District is the owner and applicant. The Community Development Department recommends that the applicant utilize the comments of the reviewing agencies and those of the Planning Commission to assist in the preparation of the preliminary plans. Deadline dates to act on the plan are not applicable to sketch plans.
Great, and I just want to emphasize that for everyone in the audience, this is a sketch plan, so it's not a formal preliminary or final land development. So the Planning Commission won't be making any votes or decisions. We'll provide our feedback, though. The applicant may provide their presentation.
Thanks. Scott McMacken with Cowan Associates. I'm the civil engineer for the school district. Yeah, we've submitted this as a sketch plan simply to get the project before you and get any comments as we move forward into the formal land development phase of the project. So, Greg, I don't know if you can put up the PowerPoint that we sent earlier. So I'm going to step back and have Sylvia with MKSD, the project architect, kind of go over the project in general, and then I'll come back up and discuss some of the comments and field any questions that you may have about the project.
Thank you, Scott. My name is Sylvia Hoffman. I'm an architect and partner at MKSD Architects. Happy to come before you tonight to introduce you to this new building that we're designing currently for Parkland School District. It's a new operations center. You can go to the next slide, please. Tonight we'll talk about, I'll go over the project goals with you, just short discussion on the existing site, show you some exterior renderings, and then also review the site and floor plan with you. Next slide. The project goals are to relocate the Parkland School District operations located at the existing Troxel building to a new operations center at 2619 Stadium Drive. May be familiar with this site. It's located just east of the existing Orfield Middle School and the football field, and bounded on the east by the Turnpike. Our approach is to develop a building program for a building that's approximately 40,000 square feet in collaboration with Parkland School District and its end users to accommodate office, storage, and workshop areas for school services, in other words, facilities for food services, technology, student registration, and maintenance and custodial. We're creating a building that will be efficient and logical in its layout and functional while still being attractive, and works in harmony with the features and the restrictions of the site and within South Whitehall Township's requirements. The building will also accommodate future growth, both within its footprint and as a potential expansion on an upper level. This building will represent Parkland School District and support the district in educating for success and inspiring excellence. The next slide shows some aerial views of the site. You can see the larger photograph has the Orfield Middle School to the west of the site. Then there's two photographs, one at the north end of Stadium Drive, looking at the property on the left-hand side, and one at the south end of Stadium Drive, looking towards the north with the property on the right. You can see from these photographs that the property is very narrow, and it's also very sloped from north to south. There's some existing buildings that the school district utilizes that are on the lower end of the photograph on the left, and the building closest to the road will be demolished. Next slide. This layout is the existing site as it appears today, and the red lines that you see on the site plan are the buildable area. So you can see that the buildable area is very narrow, and so you'll understand the building layout pretty clearly once you see that, based on where we're allowed to build with all of the various setbacks on this property. You can also see the contours are very severely sloped from one end of the site to the other. I believe it's almost 30 feet. Next slide. This three-dimensional rendering represents the west-facing facade of this new building. It's a two-story structure, and you can start to see in this elevation how the property slopes from the north end of the site, which is on the left-hand side of the image, down towards the south on the right-hand side of the image. So on the upper level of this building will be our offices. On the lower level will be all of the warehouse and maintenance functions. There's also two parking areas, one at the upper end of the site for the offices and visitors, and one at the lower level of the site for all of the warehousing, delivery, and drop-off functions that take place on that lower level. The exterior facade will be a combination of pour-in-place concrete, metal panels, and windows and glass. Next slide. This is a rendering of the view of the upper entrance into the building. This is the office end of that building. There's a registration office located directly in the front entrance of this building. There's also a screen to the left. You can see that red screen. It's kind of has holes kind of all through it and some signage. The purpose of that screen is to prevent people, students, anyone else from accessing the lower level roof of this building. Because this building is mostly bermed on the lower level, the roof is very close to grade at this parking lot level. You can see the stairs, also steps and walkway that lead down to the lower level of this building as well, alongside of the west face of this building. Next slide. This is a rendering of the lower level access to this building. You can see that there's going to be a truck dock with some screening and a loading area that'll be covered from the weather for vehicles that are pulling up to it. There's also a ramp instead of stairs to get you into this lower level of the building. And you can see the stairs there that take you up the hill to the front entrance of the building. If you notice also, there's only one part of this building that's 2 stories. It's the office area, the gray metal clad part of the building. The rest of the building is 1 story. It goes to the right of the office area where you see the gray cement concrete panels going towards the east. Next slide. Okay. This is a site plan. I think you'd be pretty oriented now that we've looked at those renderings. You can see the operation building in the center of 2 parking lots there. There's 2 access roads that we're planning into the parking areas. One is into the lower level parking. That will also serve as an overflow for the stadium parking when there's events and football games there. And then there's also an upper level of parking for visitors and people who are working on the upper level office. You can see the pink building with the hatch line around it is the one that's going to be demolished. The building just beyond that will remain. And then just a brief overview of the floor plans. You can see here the upper level, which is the office floor. The entrance is to the right. There's a registration, waiting, and an office as you come into the main lobby space. There'll be a large meeting room. Then there's a variety of private offices and closed offices. There's a stair and elevator getting you down to the lower level warehouse from the lobby. And then towards the far left of the plan are lunchroom, additional meeting space, toilet rooms, and the stair that also gets you down to the lower level. You can see the roof of the lower level is the space that's from the planned south wall all the way down to the edge of the box on the plan. Next slide. And then this is the lower level of the building. To the left are the loading docks, the ramp, and the entrance into the building. There's also a drive-in dock located here, so trucks can actually pull right into the building as well. Starting on the left, there's some loading area as well as storage facilities, workshops, warehousing, an IT work area, dry storage for food service, as well as everything in the yellow, which is a variety of storage space, anything from displays for different functions they're having at the school, different plays, to any type of sports uniforms that might be stored for different seasons. And there's also a break room down here as well. Okay, that's our presentation of the plan. Do you have any questions?
You mentioned food service. It's storage in offices. There's not a commissary kitchen being built in there, is there?
That's correct. It's just where all the food deliveries go to be stored and then proportioned out to be sent to the various schools.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you for the renderings and the floor plans. That helps give us a
Sure.
good idea of what is being proposed. I do have a laundry list of comments. Since this is sketch plan, I'll provide some feedback. Lime Kiln Road, there's frontage on Stadium Road, so we'll need the street frontage improvements, including sidewalk. I noticed the basin outfall discharges to Lime Kiln Road, so there's some concern about having the discharge right onto the road.
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, currently, from a site perspective, maybe sheet 3 of that's the existing features plan. Yeah, so that's, yeah, so essentially the site drains from the right side of the plan to the left side of the plan. Lime Kiln Road is the road on the left side there. So right now, basically the entire property does drain down towards Lime Kiln Road. Stormwater management wise, what we're proposing is kind of a 2-stage solution. There's going to be an underground stone pit underneath the large parking area on the lower level. So that large parking area that's going to be servicing the loading docks, that will essentially have a large stone bed underneath almost the entire parking area. So that will handle the stormwater, and then when that discharges, that'll go down, and we're going to have an above-ground detention basin right adjacent to Lime Kiln Road there. So that that large circular area with the lines that's going to be an above-ground detention basin as well. So we will be looking at the outfall. We're planning basically to discharge right where the water is draining now. There's essentially a roadside swale for Lime Kiln Road, but we are going to be looking at the downstream condition. It essentially runs down Lime Kiln Road. Underneath, there's just maybe 200, 300 feet down the road is a bridge where the turnpike goes over Lime Kiln Road. The water drains down there and then runs essentially down along the turnpike. So we'll be looking at that.
Thanks. Just make sure to coordinate with our township engineer.
Absolutely.
Work out those details. Two of my final questions were, number one, it seems like the parking requirements aren't met if you don't take into account future parking. And then number two, I had a question about the loading dock. What vehicle is going to be used? It looked like a tractor trailer in the one rendering, and the truck turning will have to be.
Yeah, the parking, I guess I can discuss a little bit if we want to go up maybe a plan that shows the spaces. So essentially, the concept with parking is the upper parking lot. That's the essentially the right parking lot that's going to be servicing the upper story or the offices. That's going to be mainly for any visitors coming in and basically the office staff in the building, and that we believe that we have the parking available. There will be some parking on the lower side, some of the lower level parking lot for the warehouse use. What we're anticipating during normal business hours is essentially using some of the perimeter parking spaces, the staff using that. The central core of that is not going to be parked during the week essentially, and that will be open for the tractor trailers to come in and out. I had them labeled as future parking, but if we want to stripe them, we can, but it's not going to be used during the day. Those are essentially going to be used for overflow parking for the stadium, for football games, for events at OMS. So it's essentially going to be an overflow type of additional parking available. But normally, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, there really won't be any cars in that portion of the lot. That'll be mainly open for any deliveries coming in. Yeah, there's about, I think we didn't mention this, I think we're thinking around 30 to 35 employees are going to be in this building.
Thanks for the info. I think it'll have to be coordinated with our zoning officer a bit more.
Yep, we can do that.
To piggyback on Mr. Wilson's question, you don't have any problems with showing or constructing sidewalks along Stadium? Potentially Lime Kiln?
Yeah, I think that's something we can discuss. We were already, it's not shown on this plan, but internally when we were talking, we were proposing to have at least a sidewalk from that, from the second or the left driveway entrance heading up Stadium, at least along that part of the lot to get, again, for the football, mainly for football, if they park down in that lower parking lot, that, we have a sidewalk with steps along the edge, that side of the building. But we were thinking about putting sidewalk up along Stadium Drive as well, up there. If you would like to have sidewalk, essentially in the lower portion of the lot down to Lime Kiln and along Lime Kiln, we can certainly look at that, or if that's required, we can incorporate that into the
I believe they've been requiring it for everybody, curbing sidewalk along the entire frontage,
Okay.
including Lime Kiln.
Okay.
And my question in regards to that is, What's the school district's utilization of the environmental lab on the south side of Lime Kiln? Is there students walking there, or, I mean, that lab's been there since I went to school and I graduated in '88. So I don't know how they utilize that, if there's students going there or what.
On the lower portion of this lot, or?
On the south side of Lime Kiln. You have to come to the mic, please. Thank you.
My name is Tim Crones. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Parkland. That environmental lab is no longer utilized by students, so there would be no need to have students walking up and down the side of the road to get to that location.
So what's it used for?
It's just our property, and it's not really utilized at all.
But it's signed as an environmental lab.
We don't have students go down there anymore.
Okay.
I have one other question. So very, very nice job on the presentation. That gives a really good rendering of what's proposed and happening there. There was a comment in the presentation that this is a transfer of services from Troxel, or the current Troxel building, over to this new proposed site next to OMS.
Yep.
Does the school district have any future thoughts on Troxel?
I'm Dave Keppel, the Director of School Services. At this point, once we move out of the Operations Center, there will still be a few functions in Troxel. Some might be able to move to the Ad Center because of technology moving out of the Ad Center, but there still could be a few other functions in there. When we can find a new home for them, then the building is still yet to be determined what we're going to do with the building once it's totally vacated. Okay.
Thank you.
One question, you mentioned the stone pit under the parking lot. Are you planning on infiltrating that water, or are you underground detention?
We're looking at infiltrating.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the way that this site is graded. You know, obviously, I think Sylvia mentioned there's about 30 feet elevation difference from the high side to the low side. So that parking lot is actually going to be mainly filled in. So we're just basically going to, the bottom of that stone is going to be on the existing grade, and we're just going to build up with stone essentially. So we're hoping to be able to do infiltration under that parking lot.
Last thing, in a perfect world, what's your expected date for this building to be live?
We're hoping to bid this project out next spring. And then I think it was, about 14 months? About 14-month construction. So, the following summer to have completion.
That'll be summer of '24.
Correct.
Thanks.
We're hoping to have it ready to be able to have be utilized for the 24 school year.
And I was driving by the other day, I noticed some dump trucks in the lower section. Is that use still going to be that same kind of use?
Oh, the existing buildings, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It looked like a good place for that kind of equipment and stuff. So.
Correct, yes. Outside of obviously removing that smaller building up along the road, that's going to be eliminated. But those other functions are going to be proposed to remain there.
We like repurposing a vehicle of a building, so you did a good job.
Anyone on the planning commission have any other? Anyone in the audience, including the online audience?
There's nothing in the chat, but there's a couple callers on, so I'm going to unmute the callers and see if they have any comments. If I can figure it out.
Just say keep muted.
I'm unable to unmute callers at this point.
Is there anyone in the audience here that would like to comment? I think that's everything.
All right.
This is a sketch plan, so thank you for the presentation. It was very informative, and I hope our input helps you move forward.
It does. Thank you very much for your time, and looking forward to working with you through the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on the second project on the agenda, 1429 Eck Road Outdoor Storage. This as well is a sketch plan. Greg, if you would like to do the staff presentation.
Yes, thank you. This is an application to develop the property located at 1429 Eck Road. The plan proposes to construct a 90-space parking area with guard shack on the approximately 5.11 acre parcel. The property is served by public water and public sewer and is zoned Industrial Commercial 1, Special Height Limitation IC1. Triple Net Investments CI LLC is the equitable owner and applicant. The Community Development Department recommends that the applicant utilize the comments of the reviewing agencies and those of the Planning Commission to assist in the preparation of the preliminary plans. Deadline dates to act on the plan are not applicable to sketch plans. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Tim Charlesworth. I'm with FLB, a law firm in Allentown, representing the applicant. As Mr. Adams said, this is a special exception use. We're at the sketch plan stage. The proposed use is outdoor storage, i.e. parking trucks. So I have to apologize in advance. Our presentation will not be as exciting as the last one. We have a big flat area of black pavement. We've obviously received the staff comments. We're scheduled to go before the zoning hearing board. And after that point, we'll be on to the land development process. So for tonight, of course, we're looking for guidance from the Planning Commission, here to answer any questions. And 3 members of our team are going to give you more detail on the project, and then we can answer questions along the way, or you can save them till the end, completely up to you. So first we'll have Joe Petrucci, representative of the applicant, to talk about the project, how it fits into the community, and his experience with similar projects in the area. Second will be Marty Smith, our project engineer. He'll go over some of the township's comments and questions, most of which were geared toward land development, and we're not at that stage yet, obviously, but we'll do our best to address any questions that we can. Finally, Tyler Kraus, from the traffic engineer, will talk about the use of the property, that it's really not a generator of new traffic, but nonetheless, we have done a traffic evaluation. He'll give you the preliminary results of that, and we will be submitting the full evaluation along with the special exception application. So that's all I have for the moment. I'll turn it over to Joe Petrucci.
How you doing? My name is Joe Petrucci. I'm a project executive with J.G. Petrucci Company. We've been in front of this planning commission before, so I'll spare you the background on our firm. But appreciate the opportunity to go through our project tonight. So, this is a fairly straightforward plan. It's an independent standalone trailer storage lot. This is not a new concept.
Your attorney said it was truck parking.
Trailer storage.
Truck and trailers, two different.
It's a trailer trailer, tractor
Just
trailer
trying to-
storage. Yeah, tractor trailers. So, this is not a new concept per se, but I do think that we're seeing more and more of it. I think developers, investors, and municipalities as well are getting a little bit smarter on this concept and really seeing the need for it. This is not by any means a truck stop. This is a trailer storage, short-term trailer storage lot to serve nearby warehouses and distribution centers. This is a fully paved, fully fenced, fully lit, secure lot with a guard shack. It's a professional operation. We anticipate this lot being leased to one, at the most two tenants. This is not the type of thing where we're leasing out one spot here, 5 spots there. The idea is for one group to come in and take the whole spot. I think this lot will do really well here. I think that the area has the density for it. I think you'll see once Tyler speaks, this is a low impact use relative to other industrial uses. So we received some really good comments in this agenda packet that we went through earlier today. We actually already talked about making some kind of massaging the layout to respond to some of those comments that I actually think make the layout a little bit better. So we look forward to pushing this application forward. Appreciate your time. So I'm happy to take any questions. If not, I'll turn it over to Marty to dig into the details of the plan.
What do you define as nearby warehouse and logistics? Is it the warehouses across the street, or are they in Vogelsville? Are they in Lehigh County?
I see, when I look at, when I speak of the density in the area, I'm really talking about kind of the Route 100 pocket.
Okay.
And, if you come out of this site and, go down to Crackersport Road, hit Tillman Street, going to Route 78 down to Route 100, that's really where the densities, that's where the big box warehouses are. Certainly across the street, you've got industrial activity as well. But when I think of density, I think of the Route 100.
So will these trailers be loaded, empty, or both, or?
It depends. In our experience, it's a mix of both. We're doing a project down in southern New Jersey. It's about 100 trailer parking, very similar layout, about 100 spots. We started building the lot on spec. We're blown away by the amount of activity that we got. And we ended up leasing the entire lot to Ryder Logistics, who was serving a Target distribution center right across the street. So essentially, trucks would fill up at the Target distribution center. They go out for their deliveries. They'd come back. Distribution center wasn't ready to receive them. They would park. They're going straight to our lot to park for several hours, up to a week. Those trailers were empty. I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on the clients they're serving, they have some full trailers. But for the most part, what we've seen, they're empty.
You're saying there could be some queue overflow for people waiting for delivery time into a distribution center.
Correct.
So their trailer and tractor would be there together.
This would mostly just be the trailer. They come in, they drop the trailer, and then they would leave and go service other clients, presumably.
Unless they're waiting for an appointment.
Right, unless maybe they're going to pick up another trailer, going to another distribution center, another client. Not an expert in logistics and how the companies operate, but I can speak to what we've seen from the users in our properties. For the most part, they're coming in, they're dropping, they're not idling or queuing in the lot. They're coming and dropping the trailer and leaving.
So these are like yard jockey kind of freight movements rather than over the road? Over the road.
No, it's over the road. They won't have really a jockey within the lot to maneuver trailers around. It'll be, a tractor trailer coming in, they're going to drop and then leave right away. There's no really inner lot maneuvering.
What are the expected hours of operation for a storage lot like this?
It really mirrors whoever the clients are. Will mirror the distribution center. So as I'm sure you all know, a lot of the DCs are 24-hour operations. The Ryder lot that we're doing in South Jersey, they're, I think, a 7 to 7 operation. So they're not 24 hours. We don't have a tenant yet for this lot, so I can't really speak to the specifics of the exact operation, but I can tell you what we've seen in other places.
Thank you.
So you envision like a lease for a year or?
Typically, these are 5-year minimum.
Yeah.
5-year
So
minimum leases.
like an owner operator wouldn't be able to like rent one space or?
They could, and there are plenty of lots out there like that. I don't think that we would be interested in managing something like that. I mean, you'll see a lot of lots around the valley that are, gravel, compacted gravel, stone. They've got trailers parked, this way and that way, and those I'm sure are done kind of on a month-to-month basis, short term. But we're really looking for somebody to come in, take the whole lot on an extended basis.
Let me ask you a question. Why the need for a guard check?
It's these facilities, they really, security is important, right? Because there are a lot of trucks on the road. They don't want anybody just being able to come in, drop a trailer in the lot for the night and pick it up. So security is really important, hence the fence and the guard check. But from what we've seen, most of our tenants are really requiring guard checks, and they're manned, for the most part, 24 hours, especially if there's product within the trailers.
Because unfortunately, I think that does sort of bump you into a need for water and sewer to the
Right.
site.
Yep.
Bathroom facility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which we understand.
My comment was going to mirror his, that if it's potentially a 24/7 operation, or even if just an 8-hour shift
Right.
in the guard shack, that you're going to need some kind of amenities there for the staff that are on site.
Yep.
Will this be lighted?
Yes.
Concerning the site layout and the access driveway, is there a reason why it's located so close to that residential property?
Yeah, I can turn it over to Marty.
Marty Smith with Panty and Lance Engineering. Yes, the initial layout of the driveway was to align with the driveway across the street for the recent development.
There's another driveway to the south too.
And there's very poor visibility over the railroad tracks at that end. There's no sight distance there.
So you're saying that driveway that was just constructed is unsafe?
The driveway that just constructed is on the high side of the road, so that is higher than the railroad tracks. Our side is lower. Peck Road's on a little bit of a slope there. And, review the driveway got constructed, so I assume it's safe, but the great elevation difference, it drops off from that railroad track.
Right. So, but there's also a drop down from where you're located now going north.
We're closer to the high point of the site at that location. Again, it's in alignment with a driveway on the opposite side of the street.
My concern is trucks going north on Eck, turning into your facility 24/7. The headlights are going to be just bashing that house. I just saw on one of it had the tree line along your fence, but it didn't go past like the setback of that driveway. That's my main concern.
I mean, we can discuss with the township if it's acceptable to plant, closer to the right of way and talk to the utility companies that are along there.
Because then you're also missing sidewalk and road widening. So
Understood. This is a sketch plan, and we'll propose, we want to add those items into our land development plan.
I will say, whenever trailer storage projects come up, residents do have concern, but I do want to say this helps get the trucks off the roads, parking on the roads. I know there are a lot of municipalities that have problems with tractor trailers parking on the shoulders, and this will help prevent tractor trailers parking on the shoulders. And we do have an ordinance saying you can't have the tractor trailers parked on the shoulders, and then it becomes an enforcement issue. So there is a positive to this project. I think it really benefits, especially with the facilities nearby. I'll probably reiterate some of the comments that were brought up. We need frontage improvements. Sidewalk will be required. This being a special exception, buffering of the residential house will be very important. So thick vegetation, whether it's a berm and thick vegetation, you'll have to look at the grading and whatnot, but buffering will be very important. Water and sewer was brought up already for the guard shack. In terms of the trailer storage, are they intended to be empty trailers or?
He said they might.
Generally they would be empty. I mean, there may be an occasion when there are items in the trailers.
Will they be refrigerated trailers potentially with units running?
I have absolutely no idea. Yeah, there's not a potential user for it now. I mean, we would propose and commit to any of the township ordinances that limit noise, certain materials and all that to be stored. You know, you have hazardous material storage ordinances and all that. So that would be to comply with all applicable ordinances. Circling back on the water and sewer, both are available on the property. So we would tie into public sewer and public water. So the site is served, so we can do that for the amenities.
Sewer is pretty much on the south side because it is the grade.
Yeah, it's all the way, yeah, it's be a long lateral.
You're going to find that our engineer had some turning template concerns. I think they probably are warranted.
Yeah, and as Joe mentioned too, we had went over the comments, we had township engineer comments first, and their concerns about the movements and stacking and all that. So we have already looked at adjusting the layout to have, a longer driveway into the site to allow for, if two trucks come at once, they can
I'm not
queue on there.
so sure why you show the jog in pavement, but I don't know if it helps that into your site that you go way to go north side straight up through and enter those
Yeah,
spaces.
that's where I'm gonna,
Movement.
yeah, that's the intent now, that driveway would continue continue along the north property line.
And I think the
And then
concern
make a
would be,
turn.
can you do this movement where you have an entering truck and an exiting truck at the same time?
And we'll analyze that. And
Could you expand on the proposed or vision for the stormwater management? 'Cause it looks like you're looking to facilitate that on site.
Yeah, right now, we just kind of designated 2 general stormwater management areas. I've not designed anything yet. Intent is they're at-grade infiltration basins. The site right now just generally drains from Eck Road down to the railroad right-of-way. Sort of just sits there and sort of slopes towards the turnpike. So we've kind of used the topography of the site, and the site kind of, while it all drains to the railroad track, it kind of splits between how much, what drains there.
Right. Yeah, I would say historically, I don't know the soil types in that area, but historically, the soils in that area in general are close to hydric.
Yeah, it's all our usual. We didn't find any hydric conditions in the initial test, and varying infiltration rates so far. We just did some initial ones to get an idea, and would coordinate with the township when we get to the land development, so they can observe the testing.
Down towards Crackerport, it gets probably wetter, but that site's pretty good.
So we're still analyzing, still refining, how much impervious area that we're going to have that I need to.
But you would say the intent is to facilitate the stormwater on site there with a proposed.
Yeah, and that's, I thought I drew it all on site. So it's on site there, and some outflow would go to the railroad right of way. That's where our discharge point is now. We are within a 3,100 release rate district as well, so take into account all the existing topography and what's coming off the property now.
So you've indicated you've started doing some preliminary soils testing already?
Yes.
Great, okay.
This goes back to probably more, is it Joe? Joe, from an operating standpoint, for the benefit of the zoning officer, for the benefit of some people here to understand, again, outdoor storage, really what this is. Unlike your Jersey
You're gonna have to
operation,
speak on the mic then.
unlike your Jersey operation, where you might have a little more of a live and shorter term aspect, this is long term, for the most part, parking, where a guy is renting 25 spaces off you, 5 years, he can come and go with those trailers, but it's not someone with a truck parking there and sitting in their truck.
No, they're not sitting there in the truck. They're pulling in, dropping the trailer, and leaving right away.
This is dead
Now, whether
storage.
the trailer's there for overnight, 24 hours, or a week, or maybe 2 weeks.
And that doesn't matter to you because you got your 5-year lease. It doesn't matter if he uses it. The capacity of his 5-year lease is 50 spaces. If he uses 50 or it doesn't, he's paying for those 51 ways.
Right, exactly. So, what we found is typically it's, a couple days to, a week, maybe 2 weeks. And I think that's reflected in the traffic data that Tyler
Seasonally,
looks
it might get different seasonally.
Yeah.
Depending on who the end user would be.
Right. I'm sure, during Christmas and whatever else, it kind of ramps up.
So no idling. I mean, other than the fact that the guy's parking and he has to disconnect the trailer, he's hopping back in that truck and he's leaving.
Yeah, there's no idling. It's really, a lot like this is to prevent idling at the distribution centers and
And the guard is then allowing the access. That his function
Correct.
is to check the credentials of the person, allows them in.
Exactly. He's controlling the gate. There will be a, mechanical gate that he operates and checks person in, opens the gate. They come in, drop the trailer, leave, and
I mean, food for thought.
Mhm.
If a client have some sort of gate with some sort of key code or a keypad that's an automatic gate,
right,
alleviate the need for the guard. I understand he's also there for security to watch the trailers, but maybe a taller fence, barbed wire, whatever it might be, it kind of alleviates the need for sewer and water.
Right, makes sense.
Large expense for a project like this.
Makes sense.
Does your other facility or any of your facilities have a device or mechanical apparatus to remove the snow from the top of trailers? I mean, there's a state law that requires. So
Nothing that's kind of integral to the lot itself.
last thing I want to see is a driver up there with a shovel trying to comply with a state law.
Right.
And
right.
I know it doesn't snow, but when it snows, it's several feet, it seems.
Right. Yeah.
So.
You just specify one of those.
Right. It was probably me that had brought it up, but. Right. Right. It's only needed during the winter months. So, yeah. Okay. And one last question before we get into traffic, I guess, or trip generation. The previous, or I don't know where you are in your purchase of this property, they also owned a little sliver of land between the residential property and the junkyard. Are you buying that as well?
It's all part of the property. Yep.
It shows up on.
Okay. Because it was two different parcels on Lehigh County. I wasn't sure what was going on.
They're very odd, but yeah.
And you have no future use of that? I know it's real narrow. It's like 6 feet wide or something like that. It's one of those legacy issues. Yeah. So.
Can you consolidate it to this parcel?
We performed the Alta survey on it as well, and it's actually contiguous.
Okay.
The parcel, the deed of this still goes out to Linebeck Road, runs along the adjacent property, and then there's that 5-foot strip that runs back towards the railroad. I believe to sometime over the years it had been an easement, but at some point in time, that's.
Okay.
Forgive me, I'm a little cynical. But help me understand the proximity of this and the warehouses, that when warehouse or distribution centers, whether they're flow through or they're storage for a particular company, truck doesn't get an appointment. They need a place to drop the trailer. They drop it there. 24 hours later, somebody comes, picks it up, pulls it out. Where's that empty trailer going? Back there? Or somewhere else?
The empty trailer would be going back, presumably, and from our experience, they're going back to the distribution center.
Yeah, because they've fulfilled
once the DC is ready for them, ready for the next order, they'll go. They'll
Right, so so I guess we'll get into this with traffic patterns and things, that there's a lot of in and out.
Well, I think that, it's all relative, compared to other uses. And I'll let Tyler get into more detail. But from what we've seen, these are much lighter trip generators than warehousing and any sort of manufacturing. So yes, there are in and outs, but I can tell you the rider lot, which is 100 spaces in South Jersey, they're doing about 20 trips a day total. That's like 3 or 4 during the AM and PM peak.
Mhm.
So there's not a ton of movement. Again, these trailers could be sitting there for days. So
Thanks.
Yep.
I just had a question, general question. With the driveway, if you're extending the driveway in, consider relocating the fence so that there's room for queuing. Because the way it's set up now, if there's 2 trucks there, they're going to be on the road. So if you can have the queuing occur on site, would be beneficial.
Thank you.
Tyler Kraus from McMahon Associates. I'll dive into a little bit of the traffic stuff with trip generation. So we completed a trip generation comparison letter that compares the trips for this site to other industrial sites, light industrial and manufacturing. And Joe kind of already mentioned the rider lot generating approximately 20 to 30 daily trips and 2 to 3 during the peak hours. ITE doesn't have a specific land use for outdoor storage. So we got a little creative, and NJDOT HAPS, they have that data for long-term storage parking lot is what we utilized here, which is actually more conservative than the numbers that Joe provided for rider, which included with 58 daily trips, 4 trips during the weekday morning, 4 during the weekday afternoon peak hour. Like I said, we did a trip generation comparison and compared that to other industrial uses. One of those, general light industrial, which generates approximately 206, or let me take a step back. So we looked at a building that could fit on this size lot. Marty looked at that based on the survey, and it was about 57,000 square feet. So we then generated trips for a 57,000 square foot light industrial building, which has a total daily traffic of 265 trips. Same thing for manufacturing, which generates 417 daily trips.
Are they truck trips or passenger vehicles?
Total trips.
But are they passenger vehicles or trucks?
But a mix, yeah. So it comes out to about, for the manufacturing, 26 truck trips and 391 passenger car trips. And then for the general light industrial is 14 daily trips and 251 passenger car trips.
Thank you.
So the comparison in total trips is significantly different from light industrial manufacturing to the proposed development. And also kind of mentioned throughout here, it's the purpose of this lot is for local traffic to utilize this site. It's not for new traffic to be generating to this facility. We want to take the tractor trailers off the road and give them a place to park the trailers for a long-term surge and then continue on their way. So it's typically like when you have a warehouse or manufacturing facility, you're bringing in brand new traffic to the site, to the area. This is kind of taking that local traffic that's already there.
Define local. Like South Whitehall, or?
It all depends on the end user.
Previously, it was stated Route 100, which is 5 miles away.
Understood, yeah. I mean, it depends on the end user, but the intent is to keep it as local as they possibly can. It just depends on who the end user is, which has not been determined at this time. That's basically the gist of the letter. We're going to finalize this and include this in the land development submission, but happy to answer any other traffic related questions.
Say a trailer's loaded. and he needs to get to Fogelsville, what route is he going to take from the site?
We haven't looked into that yet, but we can include that into the letter, the different, or this comparison letter and different routes they would take.
The reason why I say that is chances are they're not going to go to 309. If they go south and they're loaded and they're combined is over 25 tons, they're restricted from going to the Coonsville area because there's a weight restricted bridge. And then the intersection of Eck and Chapman's has still not been approved, even though the warehouses were supposed to do that. I don't know where that stands. Have you looked at turn movements at that intersection if nothing's ever done there?
At Eck and Chapman's?
Yeah.
We have not, but we can.
Because that's going to be critical to movements. If there's a trailer loaded, they can't get out on Cracker Sport. They're not going to go to 309 and do a convoluted route.
Can they go north up and make a left out to the four-way stop, make another left and be down in Coonsville? They can leave this site, make a right, make a left.
That's why I asked about the intersection of Eck and Chapman, because the three warehouses, they were supposed to improve that intersection, and it still hasn't been done. And full disclosure, I live on Eck Road, so I'm just experiencing trucks utilizing that road that the warehouses are open, and it's really tight at that intersection. And there's a school bus stop there. There's school buses that use this intersection. So just want to make sure that we're not making a bad situation worse until the improvements are completed on whatever timeline. I know PennDOT's involved, the PennDOT road up there, so that's why.
Yeah, and we can look into that stuff as well and see what's going on with the PennDOT process.
You're right. Chances are there's not a lot of warehousing logistics. Well, you get Alpo, that's a whole nother conversation because they have a lot of trailers over on Pope Road. And there's warehouses in North Whitehall, but majority, your client pool of tenants is probably going to be in the Fogelsville area. So we got to make sure that it's safe for everybody, including your tenant. So
understood. Any questions? I'll turn it back to the team.
Anyone in the audience or online? You may step up and just identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Tim Hauser. I'm the owner of 5006 Chapman's Road, which is the salvage yard at the corner. I know a little bit about trucks. Just a couple questions. Restrooms, not to contradict you, sir, but are very important. Guy drives 200-300 miles, comes into a parking lot. What's the first thing you're going to do? Go out to the Wawa parking lot on a hot summer day and take a deep breath. You'll know exactly what I mean. Don't mean to be rude. Dumpster for garbage. Truck drivers eat on the road. They come in, their trucks are full of garbage. No dumpster, out the window. Let's see, guard shack. If there's not actually a human in it, who's going to enforce the rules in the lot? You know, they're saying no truck parking. Well, if there's nobody there, tractors are going to stay there. They're not going anywhere because what good is to leave the trailer if they're only waiting for an hour? They're going to wait with the trailer. Let's see, sewer and water. The traffic, I'm not opposed to truck traffic, but no offense, they run all their numbers, they do all their stuff. They don't even know who they're renting it to. You know, it could be a UNFI or it could be a tire place across the street. You don't know. And as far as the corner goes, the township, you know, warehouses were supposed to do it. Eminent domain's been thrown around. Nobody wants to pay anything for the corner. So we're really at a stalemate. We had a meeting and nothing. So
we're working on it.
Everybody's working on it. I know, but you know, here we are again, and these guys want to do stuff. Everybody's going to make millions of dollars, and there's a guy with the junkyard. Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do that, and I'm still just there with the junkyard. Nobody's done nothing. No offense, you guys. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your input. You know, I'll piggyback on that. Some trash facilities, very important. Is there anyone else?
Yes, there's something in the chat. Monica, if you could give your name and address.
Hi, Monica Hodges, 1707 Penn's Crossing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I just had a quick question. Is this proposed project similar to the Crete Schaefer lot on Shonik Road in Macungie? I don't know if you're familiar with it, but does it basically have the same function? Is that what your vision is?
I'm familiar with that project.
Monica, they're saying they're not aware of that
They're not,
project.
okay. It's basically a trailer storage, but my question is this. They were not sure whether it would be reefer storage as well as regular tractor storage? Or is reefer still an option?
If you can answer in the mic. Thank you.
Yes, right now it's still an option. Without having a tenant in hand, it's still an option.
Okay, because if you do use it as reefer storage, there are some shippers that require a pre-cooled trailer. So, idling, if that is the case, you will have that idling and that idling noise. Is that correct?
Again, without understanding the specifics of who the end user is going to be, I can't really answer the question, but it is a possibility sitting here today.
Thank you for answering.
Thank you.
I mean, we don't have anything on the books that restricts refrigerated trailers, right?
We have a noise ordinance,
Yeah.
and there are some conflicting regulations that we're dealing with regards to the noise ordinance and anti-idling. So the idling's enforced by DEP, and we have a noise ordinance, and there's a lot of, and then Department of Health gets in there because of if it's food storage, it can't be below a certain temperature and they have to run the reefers. So there's a lot of nuances to it. So we have something on the books and we'll have to kind of look at it. And if it comes to it, we can start looking at restrictions, locations on your property, potentially for reefer storage.
Yeah, it goes without saying, but we, obviously will comply with.
I have a question that just popped in my head. You kept bringing up the New Jersey location. Do you allow mechanical repairs on site there, or filling of trailers, or?
No, and it's, there are these facilities that have, truck repair shops, 5,000, square foot shop for just that. And those lots do really well, but this is not that.
You're going to have a flat tire every once in a while that has to get fixed. It's
Right.
not safe, but I
Right.
just don't want, you hear Ryder Logistics, they're a
Right.
Ryder
Yeah.
truck company. I used to work for Penske back in the
Okay.
day. So it's, we can do stuff out in the patio over there. So,
Right.
And another question is back to the snow removal. It's also where are you going to push it? You seem kind of tight here.
Right.
And
yeah, no, I don't have an answer for you, but that's a good point. I mean, the snow I didn't think about, so that's a really good.
Like the cul-de-sacs that for our land developments, we always have like a snow push-off area. So, and to be totally transparent here, I've seen the warehouses across the street push snow onto your property. So if you want a video, I can show it to you. So.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that.
But, it's one thing I would think about is you think of all the seasons and snow can change the world. So thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments or? Great, come on.
Hi, I'm Michael Pushkar. I live 1479 Eck Road. I would say before any of this is going to be built, you should really consider Eck Road improvements. because there's no way tractor trailers can stay on their side of the road. Two barely if they're going straight. It's not safe. The intersection's not safe. Coming up towards my house, they're on over the yellow line. That should be done first before anything should be built. It's ridiculous. And they just leave everybody. They build all these warehouses. These guys fly up and down the road with the tractor trailers, never going the speed limit. That should be done first. And I don't like that this driveway is going to be right next to my house. You know those trucks are going to come in there with reefers on them, and it's going to be running, and that's all I'm going to hear all night is that. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will say in terms of street improvements, I agree. I completely agree. We are handcuffed a little bit in terms of what we require. State code pretty much only allows us to require the street frontage to be improved, but they'll definitely be coordinating with our township engineer and discussing that, but Pennsylvania state code sort of handcuffs us in terms of
Am I mistaken that the warehouses across the street were supposed to do that improvement? It's part of their approvals?
Which one? Which improvement?
Eck and Chapman's.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was never done. So nothing else is going to be done if this all just keeps getting flopped in there. Ain't going to do it. It's just going to get worse. There's already tons of trucks there. More trucks coming up. They'll be coming in 24/7, really?
Thanks for your input. It's duly noted. Is there anyone else that has any comments?
I just want to say quickly in summary too, like we had mentioned in the beginning, we had received all the review letters from the various staff, going to comply, with the items presented there. We'll coordinate, continue coordinating with staff when we move into the land development process, with the assumption that, in 2 weeks, when we're before the zoning hearing board, for the special exception, if that's approved, then the next step is working on our preliminary land development plan, incorporating the comments from staff.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so that was a sketch plan, so we don't make any votes. It's more of an informal plan presentation. So now we're on to agenda item number 6, zoning ordinance service pack 2C.
Buddy, thank you.
Thank you.
Leo. This is like when you go corner. Quite a bit of it, yes. They were. That. He's talking like where he lives.
I don't need no stinking water. Okay.
All right, Greg.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. We'll let Greg give his presentation.
All right, I'm sure you've all read these carefully and are.
You don't have two waters. You don't have two waters ready to go, like.
I don't need water. You should know that by now.
I might let you take over for the comp plan meetings.
I did that. They liked it. All right, as I mentioned at the pre-meeting, my intent is you received these 3 months ago for review. I believe at the July 21st meeting was our first look at this.
So the teacher's telling us we should have done our homework by now.
I read them.
We'll find out.
All.
I read the majority.
I read them all.
So as I went through the first time, there are 3 different categories here. The first category was the typos, broken references, and obvious inconsistencies. We went through those in July 21st meeting. All of them, there were no comments from the Planning Commission on any of them. So basically, I will be skipping those unless somebody has any questions or comments this evening on something in particular there. Yes.
On page 15, the highway commercial zoning district scheduled to amend bulk criteria standards for 3 flats and townhouses. The last sentence in the description says staff opined that more realistic standards based upon the R10 bulk criteria standards should be put in place.
Yes.
Because? Is there a particular
Basically,
reason?
for 3 flats and townhouses, I believe. Laura, can you check this for me? 3 flats and townhouses, are they only in the R5 and R10 or only in the R10? I have the zoning officer.
Human portal.
Yes.
We have a 2 flat and a 3 flat in the R5.
Okay, so the 3 flats in the R5, the townhouses are the R5 and R10, or sorry, 3 flats are R5 and R10, townhouses are R10 only.
No, townhouses are also in an R5.
Okay, there you go. All right, so the reason was that basically highway commercial, I believe for the other items was modeled off the R10. So it made sense to make the townhomes and 3 flats consistent. And it is highway commercial. It's not a medium density residential. It's mainly a commercial that has some high density residential attached to it. 39 Bulldog. Yes, that is highway commercial.
Oh, I'm sorry. So if that's zone highway commercial, then he could come back in with townhouses and flats?
Yes, actually, that was
Do that
one of the
now,
things
right?
they tried to do initially. So, but they really, yeah, they wanted apartments. And so they tried to go that way as well. They didn't get the variances needed. So they were stuck with the overlay district as their only venue to get what they wanted.
So Greg, one of the reasons that caught my eye is the chart at the bottom of page 15. The minimum lot acre per use went from 3,600 to 12,000 square feet. Significant change.
Yes. The problem was that the original were a copy and paste error from someone else. I'm not even sure that these were actually supposed to be for 3 flats and townhouses. They might have been for some other housing type.
Okay. And again, there was a 12 maximum dwelling unit per gross acre. There'll be no max per acre if this is amended as it's written?
Correct. Right. These units don't have gross units per acre. since a 3-flat has a specific lot size associated with it, that is the
That is
density.
the measurement. Okay.
Same thing with townhouses. The units per acre only applies to apartments because you can build up and over.
And mobile homes.
Actually, yeah, I guess we do for our TNDs, the mobile homes have, yeah.
They don't have lot lines. I mean, they have lot dimensions.
They have lease lines. Yeah. So yeah, it looks like 3,600 square feet for a 3-flat, that may have applied to a townhouse because you're looking at a 30 by 120 foot lot, which is kind of typical for a larger townhome lot. And the townhouse looks like it might have been even a smaller townhouse lot. So that was definitely for different housing types, I believe.
Thank you. And one other question on page 17. I apologize, I was not at the meeting when these were discussed, so.
Yeah, that's right,
Pulling up-
you abstained.
I was.
Yes.
On page 17, in the middle of the page, staff recommends section 350-24. I see one zoning permitted uses be amended to add restaurant, sit down, and stormwater.
No, to be added between those two. Those two already exist.
Okay,
We would
so
simply
just
be
to add-
moving it in between those two.
Understood. Thank
So
you.
it fits alphabetically.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. That's all I have
Okay.
for that section.
Okay, good. Anyone else have anything for the first section? Okay, we will move on to the second section, which we did review at the July 21st meeting. A number of the items we looked at did generate comments. So I will address those comments, tell you how we changed the ordinance to address the comments if we did.
Page 43, is that where we're starting?
Starting on page 43. Now to note, items 1 and 2, which start on page 43 and then 45, we skipped the first time out. And we did some pretty serious revisions in the interim. So if you looked at them the first time, you're seeing something very different the second time. So I will just go over these to tell you what we're proposing here. The first one is adding a definition for parking aisle and parking area. That may not be accurate, but that's what it is. Basically, we've had some issues with clarifying terms within a off-street parking area. Because some of the setbacks apply to some of the terms, setbacks don't apply to some of the other terms. So we wanted to be crystal clear about what the setbacks applied to and what they didn't apply to. So basically, we have this concept of there's an access lane which connects parking spaces to driveways. An access lane is always adjacent to a parking space. So basically, if you're going down a row of 2 parking spaces, the access lane is what's in between. You have a parking area which contains parking spaces and access lanes. And then lastly, you have the off-street parking, which also includes driveways which connect the parking areas to the street. So to get these concepts clarified, we found that we needed to make a change to access lanes, remove the connects multiple parking areas and simply state in there that it connects the parking spaces within a parking area and connects a parking area to a driveway. Access, and we clarify by saying access lanes directly adjoin parking spaces. Kind of interesting to hear, but if you think about a parking lot, for example, the one right out here.
Or how about the truck one we just looked at?
I don't want to go there.
Well, it's fresh in everybody's mind.
It is. Basically, you have the driveway coming off of the road. It's where the street joins the roadway into the parking area. That's a driveway. Once you get to the point where you're starting to connect to the actual parking spaces, those become access lanes. And this is important because there is a parking setback, 15 feet and 25 feet, depending upon size of lots and such. That pertains to your access lanes and your parking spaces. It does not pertain to your driveway. It can't pertain to your driveway because the driveway's got to go from the parking area to the street. So there can be no setback for a driveway. Commercial driveways, there is where it is located next to a property line. But when you're talking about a frontage concept, there can't be a setback for that. That's why you have the distinction between the two items and how we have to clearly call out what is what. So we know what pertains, what the parking setback pertains to and what it doesn't pertain to.
I hate to bring it up, but the plan we just looked at, when does the driveway become part of the aisle?
Basically, when you get to the parking spaces. So in the plan we just saw, it goes from the road, past the fence, and then once you get about to the guard shack, then you start getting an area where the driveway transitions to the access aisles because they're directly adjoining a parking space.
Got it.
That's where it is. So that allows us to say, okay, for the driveway, setbacks don't apply to that. But that access aisle and the parking space, yes, it does. So that's why we wrote this out, to be very specific and very clear about what setbacks apply to and what they don't apply to. It's a simple concept, but sometimes you really have to.
Yeah, I see in a lot of ordinances, it's a very gray issue, and then there's so much back and forth.
It can be, and
this clearly defines it, so it gives the applicant, it gives the township clear definitions.
Yeah, and that's
It's
why.
also to clearly define it between a residential driveway
Mhm.
and a commercial property.
Because different rules apply to those too. So we took that into account.
Because most commercial properties, you don't call them driveways, you call them access areas, your aisles and your
Yep.
parking spaces. So we didn't want to apply the commercial regulations to a residential driveway.
Yeah, absolutely not. So that's why you see a lot of them have A's and B's, because they do tell you A is residential, B is non-residential, how that works. So that's what that was for. Plus, we then made changes within the zoning ordinance to be consistent with access lanes. In some spots, we call them aisle or aisle space or access aisles. So we made all those changes so that they're all now consistently called access lanes to match the definition. So any questions on that one? And just to let you, as I had said at the pre-meeting, we only have one application for next month that is also a text amendment request. So you will be seeing these one more time at least. So if you think of something else after the meeting, that's fine. You'll get to see this again.
Are there any changes to this?
What you see is what's proposed now.
Do you have any more feedback?
If this meeting or anything
shot.
between now and then generates comments, you may see revisions again.
So we have another shot.
You have another shot at this, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Okay, so if there aren't any questions, I'll move on to the next one, item 2, which is on page 45. This is the other one that we skipped last in July. So this is to amend buffer screening requirements to clarify and increase options for buffer strips and clarify when they're required. The main impetus for this, I hate to say it, was the fact that we really don't have any requirements for buffer screening. We always say we do, we tell them what they need, but it's very hard to point in here to something that actually is that. So I said, let's fix that, please. So basically, we took the buffer screening requirements, which at this point are generally intended for between two properties. Hence the dense hedges, deciduous, evergreen shrubbery with a fence, or screening as it gave you two options. So what I did was, the existing is shown on page 45 in green, by the way. So what I did was on page 46, moving to the top of 47, is show the changes that I'm proposing right now. So basically, I'm tearing this apart and putting it back together again to offer two options. We have the screening, which is either dense plantings with the specifications there, which is basically evergreen and deciduous, 50% shall be evergreen. That's already in there. I'm adding shall be on a staggered row of no more than 4 feet apart on center. That's a new. The existing one also says maintain to 5 feet in height above adjacent grade. And then adding plants shall present a solid screen between 12 and 48 inches above grade. So you don't get people trimming them up. And then I also keep the item 2, which is a fence and evergreen plantings. And that basically stays unchanged. So now between two properties, you have the option of dense evergreens or slightly less dense evergreens and a fence.
And who makes that decision? Whether it's the evergreens
It's an
or the
option.
fence?
So this is meant to be either or. They're meant to be,
The developer would decide.
yeah, and they're meant to be consistent with each other. It's just you can have fewer plantings if you have a solid fence. If you don't have a solid fence, you need more denser plantings.
So the reason I'm asking the gentleman who spoke tonight with the
Mhm.
residents next to this parking lot,
Yep.
if it's up to the developer to choose, does a resident who's going to be affected by it have a voice to say, I would prefer to have the most shielding, and maybe that would be a fence, you know, in his opinion. I don't know.
The resident has a voice. It is an option on the developer. The resident can choose to listen to a neighbor or not. There have been situations where we had neighbors actually voice a choice.
And
they've been,
the resident's choice is if the neighbor puts up a fence, the resident can always put up a vegetative buffer. So,
Themselves, you mean?
yeah,
Yeah, themselves.
Right,
yeah.
I'm saying.
But you know, during public comment, during the process, they can certainly express their opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question I have is, do we mention it doesn't look like we mentioned anything in when the solid screen should occur. Like, are they going to have to plant it as a solid screen and then the plants grow?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So they're
in
going to
land-
grow into each other.
In land development, it's generally considered that they're planted during the construction process and are allowed to grow, much like street trees are allowed to grow like that.
So is it like at 5 years anticipated growth, it's a full screen, or is it at planting?
It's generally not at planting. I mean, we do have planting specs for buffers
Yeah.
that do put something in there. I think the planting specs are generally at 5 feet in height.
Okay.
So you'll get them at the requisite height, but they may experience growth to bush out more
Yeah.
as
So
they grow.
and it's hard to really quantify it because plants grow at different rates, and
Mhm.
you know, if it's at anticipated 1 year of growth, that kind of gives them, they're not having to go in and plant mature trees and
Yeah.
bringing in
And-
the giant digger to put in the new trees.
And of course, this is a zoning ordinance.
Yes.
So this applies throughout. So 10 years after these planted, if they die, if there are complaints, the zoning officer can go out and say, hey, that does not meet ordinance now. You need to correct this. So this is something that is basically, more or less permanent once that use goes in. And remember, these buffers are generally put in between different use types. So it's between, say, commercial and residential, between industrial and residential, between industrial and commercial. That's where the buffers are generally required. They're not required between commercial and commercial. They're not required between residential and residential. It doesn't mean that a property owner can't do it on his own. He certainly can. It's just the township doesn't require them in those situations. So a lot of this is actually, like I said, in our ordinance now. So we're just elaborating more, giving a second option for that. The other thing I do want to mention is that we are now adding a third option, which is going to be done for buffering, for screening that's required on any outdoor storage material, finished or partly finished goods, dumpsters, unhitched tractor trailers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, uh, Those shall include the fence or solid barrier, at least 95% solid, uniformly colored of a durable natural material such as cedar, cypress, or redwood, not less than 5 feet tall, not more than 4 inches above grade. That is meant for screening dumpsters in particular, but it could also be interpreted for air conditioning units, electrical transformers, generators, shipping containers, tractor trailers not parked at loading docks or loading zones, something along those lines. So that gives the zoning officer, I mean, that stuff was already in there. We just didn't have a good method of screening them given. You could have used the dense plantings, but for the most part, you never saw a dumpster screen with dense plantings. It was all the 6-foot fence with the privacy screen, which technically did not meet standards. Now we're allowing that to actually be the township standard. So that's why I added that bit in there. So that's pretty much what we're proposing in this one. On page 47, you see the new section as revamped, and this will be what will be replacing the old section in green on page 45.
Greg,
Yes.
back on page 46,
yes.
is there a reason or necessity to say that the planting on no more than 4 feet apart center? Even going to David's comment, the guideline or the ordinance is stating here that they need to be staggered no more than 4 feet apart on center.
Right, and generally speaking, when you're talking about deciduous plantings like hedges or shrubs, they do tend to grow outward. And of course, 4 feet on center means the first one gets a 2-foot spread, then its adjacent guy gets a 2-foot spread, so it comes in. And I think that's generally a standard that we see in other places.
Yeah, it's common, pretty standard.
Yeah. So it allows them to be spread.
Also doesn't allow them to put too little amount of trees in.
Yeah.
Making him put a required amount in by saying 40 feet, putting in the required amount of trees.
Yeah, exactly. You can push them in a little closer, but no more than 4 feet on center. We figured that provides enough density to
I think
write a
the
screen.
potential issue is to get to the solid screen. They're gonna have to put in less than 4 feet to account for that
Not necessarily.
item D at the time of planting.
Yeah. But if they're putting in 8.5-foot balled and burlap white pine that have
Yes.
leaf spread down to the bottom, I
right.
mean, they're coming out solid 6 feet across the base.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Generally, you don't see a lot of white pine as this kind of buffer screening.
Yeah. I guess it all depends. I was saying, my point in questioning that was that I felt we were covered later on by having, can't find it now, having at least the solid screen.
Yeah.
But I guess the zoning officer would have some ability to make judgments.
Yeah, absolutely.
That they're
Yeah.
making a credible effort.
Yeah.
You know, if they're.
I mean, if she's getting calls, complaints, and we've had this, for example, Ryder Truck had a nice white pine screen up against the residential areas. And over time, as you know, white pines tend to die from the bottom up. So we started getting calls on that. They did something. I don't know. I recall the calls coming in. I wasn't the zoning officer, so I don't know what the remedy was, but
Staggered plantings with mixed species.
yeah, that helps. Yeah, a lot of these screens, I think people don't want something to get tall. So they want something manageable, so a shrub going 6-8 feet tall is about as tall as they want. They really don't want trees there. It doesn't prevent somebody from putting their own buffer in, but as long as they meet this standard, they can thicken a buffer as thick as they want.
So if they had an earth berm,
Mm-hmm.
where's the grade? Is it top of the berm or at the?
Depends where the plant is. If the plant's at the top of the berm, that's at grade. If it's down lower, it's on the plant. So it's 4 inches above grade where the plant comes out of the ground.
Because, you know, I could see a situation, especially with that
Mm-hmm.
parking lot, that they might do a berm or, you know.
Yeah, and this doesn't prevent them from doing that. And certainly in a situation like this, we would kind of encourage that. Because you do have, well, as you said, potential idling, you've got lights, you've got noise, and a berm would definitely help with that.
That might be an option, maybe not at this right, but in the future, like we have 3 options now.
Mhm.
Maybe a fourth is some sort of berm with whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that came up. But as I said, there's nothing preventing that.
I was gonna ask if that was considered, because sometimes I see it in a lot of ordinances, you know, you get a big 5-foot berm, that provides a lot of buffer, you know, blocking
Yeah.
the view.
Blocks a lot of headlights compared
Yeah.
to.
That it
The
does.
best thing for that parking lot would be a 6-foot solid white vinyl fence that's gonna
That
push
could also
sound
be.
up and keep the light away, and
Yeah.
hopefully he comes prepared and says, I'm gonna
Yeah.
make sure I don't blind this guy.
They were having a good
Sound
conversation out here, so.
Yeah,
I bet they were.
I think he knows he has to do something
Yeah.
better.
So basically, as I said, the intent was to explain this a little better and widen out the options, particularly with the dumpster issue.
Am I reading it correctly? So if I just did a solid white 6-foot privacy fence, I'm not required to do screenings on top of that?
You are required to do the fence and evergreen plantings, just fewer evergreen plantings. In essence, the concept is that the evergreen plantings soften the fence.
And I'm assuming that's on my side of the fence?
That's on
Other side,
Yeah.
the
Yep.
neighbor's side of the fence.
neighbor's side, yes.
So the fence then isn't really on your property line, it's inset.
Yeah, and all these buffers are generally on the commercial or industrial property. It's not required on the residential side. Which once again, doesn't prevent the residential place from putting in a fence.
Right.
But, you know, we've seen to put the onus of buffering on the more intense use.
AutoZone would be a good example.
Yep.
The new AutoZone that went in, there were some neighbors that came in,
Yeah, I
and the
remember.
fence went in first, and then they did either a berm or a swale, and then they did trees on both sides of the swale, I believe.
Yeah.
So, but the fence is into the AutoZone, and that's what the neighbor and them agreed on.
Dollar General too.
Yes,
Yes,
they have a
yes.
fence, and on the south
Outside.
side of the fence are also plantings. You really can't see them because if you're on Walbert, all you see is the fence, but they're there. Some have died, but some are still alive.
I still would like to see a fourth option for a berm. Just,
We can try to do something there.
I'm sure somebody's done something that we could copy and steal.
Yeah, I've seen a berm, a berm and sound wall by the FedEx Ground Hub on Willowbrook Road. Sorry, I forget. I always.
It's Bullhead, yeah. And
Hanover and East Allen,
Yes.
but
It's East Town,
For a lot of the neighboring towns.
or even out.
yeah, they have a berm. That site has a berm and sound wall. Right
a lot
on
of
the
them were
property.
asked during planning commission during the subdivision and land development time is when they were getting the berms in. And then going back to what Greg said, how do you measure? We would measure from grade on top of the berm for any of the bufferings. So,
Yes, that might be a 5-foot high berm.
right, it may not necessarily need to be something that's added into zoning. I mean, I think you guys have the option of asking for that stuff. But if they're going to give you,
If they see it written,
if they're going to,
Yeah.
if they're going to, you know, go again or give you a hard time, then put it in and sure, I'll enforce it.
right.
Yeah. Now, generally, you're talking about a buffer strip 15 feet wide. So
You need a lot of space for the berm, and
The
then you get
berm
into a
generally
grading
does
issue
require
whether you
more
gotta make it a
space.
3-to-1 slope or
Right.
and then you're into variances because I could do the berm, but now I can.
That also leads to drainage on the outside of the berm. If the property's draining this way and you put the berm in, now you need inlets on the backside. So yeah, your buffer strips usually get to be 40 feet, until you can actually get a good sized berm in there that's not straight up, straight down. You need a 3-to-1, 4-to-1 slope to.
Right, that's why they're usually
Soften
done
it.
during subdivision and kind of stormwater.
Yeah. And usually, I mean, if you're traveling down Walbert that way, you see what that looks like on the residential side where, the developer of those residences put the berm in because they wanted to buffer, Walbert Avenue from the backyards. That is, I think, a lot more than 15 feet. So we can put it in, obviously as an option, but if developers don't want to chew up more than their 15-foot requirement of the buffer strip, I mean, you might get one that has a little extra room, they might use it.
And it might make their project better
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
mitigate neighbor outcry.
We'll brainstorm and add it in. Okay.
It would at least be a really good requirement in the industrial zones, because a lot of the industrial projects that you see going around Hanover, all of them, it looks really nice when they do them,
Yeah.
like on Airport Road.
And we've had it as requirements in industrial zones, buffers with planting or berms with plantings, and it does a really good job of preserving the visual. You're blocking the interior of a development, so you still maintain that kind of rural character of a road. So I'll
Yeah.
pull some stuff and we'll work on something.
Give you an extra option. Any other questions on that one? Okay, moving on. All right, item 3 on page 50, there was a comment on that. I think it had to do with maintenance. I'm looking on page 53. Item D3, paving maintenance and drainage. There was a discussion regarding the last sentence of that. All driveways, regardless of surface, shall be properly graded, maintained, and constructed. It wasn't that one. It was the next one. In the middle. And required to be maintained in a reasonable condition. I think the question was, what is a reasonable condition? And there was some discussion at that. And I think at the end, Jennifer provided the thing that I'd really like to hang my hat on, is that the township does like to allow the zoning officer some discretion in situations like this. So rather than go with a hard and fast industry standard, so to speak, we'll let the zoning officer make the call as to whether it's in a reasonable condition or not. And generally, once again, most of these things would be born from complaints. So if you get a neighbor complaining that, Crest Plaza, for example, isn't maintaining their
There's grass growing through it.
yeah, or there's an 8-foot pothole, or something along those lines. It gives her the option of going out there and saying, hey, this area is cracked. You've got plantings coming through it. It's 4-inch break you need to fix that. And she can go back there. And if they want to contest us, fine, take us to, the magistrate and argue that it's not in reasonable condition.
Do we have, I'm sure Laura would do this, but let's say there was a handicap spot that had just a small little hole, but that little hole is big.
For a handicap spot. Yeah. And once again, if she determines that that is unreasonable for someone in a walker.
Right. Okay.
Then yeah. So that was the conversation. I made no change off of that. Any questions? Okay. Moving on. Item 4, which is on page 55, retaining walls. Retaining walls. I think there are some questions on that one. What is a fence? We do have a fence defined. And basically we do have exceptions to the fence, the permit requirement for fences, or the proposed permit requirement for fences. Temporary fences such as walls and snow fences, agricultural purposes, including gardening ancillary to residential use. I think I did add that. So that addresses the whole concept of what if I just put a stake in the ground and put up some chicken wire? So, okay, that no longer requires a permit. Fences and barriers around construction sites, construction shoring not to extend more than 1 year. So I'm kind of hoping that addressed the concerns there.
I have a question on the construction site fencing. So this is stating that there will not need to be a permit.
Correct. And when we're talking about construction fencing like that, generally it's the fencing that have feet that then have sandbags put on for stability. We're generally not talking about stuff that is installed with a footer or anything like this. This is meant to be temporary construction fencing, snow fencing, or do they still have that stuff down at Walbert and Cedar Crest where it's
Orange.
The orange.
no,
was there,
the
though.
big chain link fence with the
It was
feet.
in the parking lot at Target.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
So it was just like the flat feet and they put the sandbags on it.
Yeah. This is meant for truly temporary.
they even had
Fencing.
that around that foundation that they dug out for the house in the corner.
Yeah, like that.
Temporary.
Yeah, so they put it up, they do their construction work, and then they take them out and move them somewhere else. So that's what this is for. No permits required for that. If you're doing raising or construction otherwise, you're getting permits. So the township will be out there inspecting.
So let's say a warehouse is taking 3 years to be built and they have various temporary fencing. When would they have to go? Like, when would they get in trouble?
I guess if they still have it after the CO's issued. I mean, basically, as long as we would look at is there a hazard from the construction? If we're satisfied that the construction is to the point where it's all interior and there would be no hazards to pedestrian traffic or the like, then we can start looking
And
at
one of the things that
removing
we've
it.
started putting in agreements is requiring fencing to, and as part of our ordinance in litter, is to keep litter from what is it? I forgot.
Blowing off property,
Blowing off the
basically.
property, basically. So using that fencing to do that is one of the things we started building in. And this temporary fencing is exactly that type of fencing.
Any more questions on that one? Okay. Moving on to item 5 on page 56. Question came back about, I like this one, what about accessory dwelling units? Because basically for water and sewer services, you have to have public and water and sewer to have an attached dwelling unit, which is twins, 2 flats, 3 flats, townhomes, and apartments. Those are all your attached dwelling units by definition. So ADUs can be attached or detached. We looked at these as they're generally singles only, and it's regulated by the SEO. Because if you're doing a single out beyond public water and sewer, you have a improved septic system. And that septic system is generally sized by the number of bedrooms. So if you're adding a bedroom and you exceed what you're allowed by your septic permit, that's when we would, make that call. So for accessory dwelling units, both attached and detached, they would be more regulated by the SEO and that kind of regulation. Now, obviously, if you're in public water and sewer, that's not an issue. So hopefully that addresses your concerns there. Moving on to item 6 on the next page. This is temporary uses by right. I think one of the items was, Tony mentioned this, there were some clear sight triangle concerns with pods, and I could see them with dumpsters too. And he suggested we could add a section in or something to one of these sections that says that they shouldn't be put in the clear sight triangle. That's fine, but we already have regulations that say you can't put them in clear sight triangles. And one of the things we tried so hard to do 10 to 15 years ago was to remove overlapping regulations from the zoning ordinance. So the zoning officer wouldn't have to be enforcing a lot of regulations that are outside zoning. So basically, clear sight triangle is a standalone ordinance. Any code enforcement officer can enforce that. not just a zoning officer. So we feel that that by itself would take care of the issues in clear sight triangles. So if you still want it added, we can add it, but it's already somewhere else. And quite frankly, one of the issues that we've run into is if you amend an ordinance and you have an overlapping section somewhere else, you then have to remember that and amend that as well. So if you decouple these overlapping ordinances, then you're just amending one ordinance instead of trying to remember that, hey, there are sections that also apply in other ordinances. So if you're fine with leaving clear sight triangle issues to the clear sight triangle ordinance, we can leave it there and just be done with it.
Portable storage units. It says for a period of less than 30 days, no more than twice a year. Can they be there longer than 30 days, or is that covered elsewhere?
Yes. Yes, extensions can be granted by the zoning officer. That's in the section that is currently, a permit is required for that.
Got it. Okay.
Now, of course, the problem with that is if a permit wasn't required for the first 30 days, how do you know when those first 30 days are up? So that's why we're trying to require permits for this stuff, so we can actually track them and, enforce the regulations that if you don't have a permit for, we don't know they're there in the first place. So that's why
Something
we do
like that is usually a complaint will come in, like an RFI, and that is what starts our clock.
Yeah.
Is when we get that RFI, so that we can verify when it started. So
if it's been there 90 days,
it's kind of up to the tolerance of the neighbor, and that's how we start the clock.
But if a permit's required from the get-go, then we have a clock that starts once that item, the dumpster or the pod, gets there in the first place.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, moving on to the next one, page 61, item 7. Non-conforming structures and buildings to clarify the conditions under which non-conforming building and structure may be rebuilt. There was some question about arson. So I added the little bit there about if it's destroyed by accident, criminal act, but only if determined not to be by or at the direction of the property owner. So if you choose to burn down your own shed, well, we're not going to let you rebuild it if it's non-conforming in the first place. Now, if your neighbor does it out of spite, not at your direction, well, that's a different matter. So I hope that takes care of the arson issue. All right, we're going to skip number 8 because that had no comments, unless somebody has comments. Number 9. This was the dairy and food processing and distribution. The only comment there was there were 2 asterisks on the X's in the special exception row in the where permitted table on page 64. Since we had removed asterisks from a similar situation, it said, well, why don't we do that here? So I said, you're right, we should. So I removed the asterisks. So hopefully that adds a little clarity for our zoning officer. Okay. Any other questions? Moving on to item 10. We're going to skip that because there were no questions to that. Item 11, 35048M9, motor vehicle service facility to clarify definition. Somebody brought up fleet vehicles, activities of fleet vehicles. I thought that was a sensible thing, so I did add it. So you now have that. This is, well, you can see at the bottom, page 67, what I added. General public was the original addition, and then we're excluding activities inclusive to the support of fleet vehicles as the other one. So that should address that issue. Any other questions? Moving on. Skip 12 because that one had no questions. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 had no questions. Now we can move into the final 17 pages. And hopefully these won't be too bad.
So where are we starting? What page are we starting on?
We're starting on page 82.
I didn't want to count back from the front or from the rear.
Or if you prefer, page 142. Dave, don't stretch us out. So these are the resident/business inspired issues. These are the items that we saw as potential benefits to residences. They proposed something and we thought, they said, the zoning ordinance can't allow this now. And we thought, well, that's silly. This does sound like something that'd be beneficial. Or
All residences or
Residents-
or commercial too?
residents or business owners
Okay.
brought these to our attention. So it was either stuff that they brought in that they couldn't do and we thought should be allowed, or that they were proposing something that was permitted and we looked at it and said, oh boy, that's a problem. And they didn't move forward with it, so it allows us to fix the problem before it becomes a problem. So starting on page 82 of this, amend section 350.13D3 to change the time period required for an applicant to begin construction on an approved project. And this is for a zoning hearing board action. Currently, when the zoning hearing board grants a variance, it's 1 year. Construction has to begin in 1 year. Well, as we all know, COVID changed things. Regulations have changed over time. If you get into stormwater or sewage facilities planning, 1 year is not enough.
Oh.
So basically, we opined, hey, let's stretch that to 2, give people, so they don't have to continually go back to the zoning hearing board for an extension. In theory, if they're on the ball, they should be able to go from variance through land development, through plan recording in 2 years and get that building permit rolling.
Can they get an extension on that?
They can still get an extension, but it gives them 2 years to worry about the extension instead of 1. So yeah, they still have the option of getting an extension. It's just, we were seeing so many coming in because they just couldn't get everything accomplished within the 1 year time frame.
Yeah.
And it's taking up zoning hearing board time. They're spending money. It's.
Do they generally give the township like updates or?
Generally not on this sort of thing. They just
Sometimes you as a staff or a neighbor might, well, did they abandon it, or?
Well, and that's why we have the 1 year, is that we are cognizant of what variances have been granted. We know the dates so that, we have a tickler file, and basically when that comes close to its 1 year, we check back to see if a permit has been drawn. If it has, we check the progress of it. If it hasn't, then we alert them and say, hey, you're coming up against your 1 year. You need to go back to the zoning hearing board to get an extension if you are continuing forward. If you're not continuing forward, then it doesn't matter. This just doubles that time frame that we have to worry about.
Yeah.
So that's a simple explanation as to what this is proposing. Any questions?
I'm just curious how often the applicant does come back after to ask for an extension. Is that fairly common here in the township?
It
Just
is.
curious.
It is, yeah. It's uncommon to have just 1 year because, and especially now with COVID, I think we had 4 so far. They can't get materials. That's another thing that's happening right now. There's a lot of things that are out of their control just because of COVID. And so who knows how long it's going to take till we get back on track the way we were, if we ever did. So I think it's just wiser to give them that extra time to get things together. And even then, it may not. DEP also increased their time frame for certain things.
The whole planning module issue is one that we're dealing with now.
taking
That's,
6 to 9 months.
Yeah, 9 months at
Our
least.
engineers
Yeah,
are groaning.
And it's not just commercial, it's residential. Most of them were residential homes
Yeah.
because we're
Sitting
waiting on
over there.
DEP modules.
Bob Cordry and
Yeah.
Cook City Crossing.
Yeah, and this is just basically put in place so that people, it allows the township that idea of tracking it, so that if people get their variance and don't do anything with it, in theory, if you don't have this, that variance is good for ever. Whereas here, we had that 1-year time limit so that we ensured that they did actually move forward with whatever project they had. And if they didn't move forward with the project, then it would nullify the variance. So this was originally intended to be a help for the township to keep on the ball with this stuff. It's just that timeframes have become so stretched now that it's no longer a reasonable period. So we're just stretching the period. Yeah, that's all we're doing. Any other questions, comments? Moving on to item 2. This is amending section 350.42A, accessory uses and structures, 350.48G1, garage, carport, private, and section 350.48 S17, storage building, shed, to clarify setbacks and proportionality to the primary use. We've had people come in with extraordinarily large garages. I've seen a house of 2,400 square feet, and somebody was proposing an 8-car garage. Detached, of course, which I believe was about 3 times the size of the house. At that point, you've got a garage that just happens to have a house next to it. We've always kind of had this policy of proportionality. In fact, I think it was actually embedded in the zoning ordinance years ago. And at some point, it came out. And we'd like to put it back in. So the concept is that for a garage or detached garage, not an attached garage, but a detached garage, the building footprint and or gross floor area shall be no greater than 75% of the building footprint and or gross floor area of the principal dwelling unit.
Is there a way to provide some relief to a person who has 25-acre lot?
Zoning hearing board. That's always, for the zoning ordinance, that is always the relief. And that's the point of the zoning hearing board, is if you have something particular to the site, if you're putting your garage 800 feet back into the woods, is that an issue? Well, take it to the zoning hearing board and let them decide.
Is there a clear definition that differentiates a garage from like a barn?
You have shed, which would be a storage unit, which would probably be a residential equivalent of what a barn is.
Right.
Or the garage, in which is what you store cars. So there is that differentiation. Barns are kind of unusual because usually they're existing.
What about a pole barn?
Yeah, like if I wanted to put up a pole barn.
Still accessory structure. And that's kind of why we wanted this, is because if you have a 2,400 square foot house and put, a 50 by 100 pole barn on it, generally speaking, we don't want that. That is losing your sense of proportionality.
So are we applying this to other accessory structures?
Residential, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And once again, you have the option of going to the zoning hearing board and basically arguing, hey, I've got a lot that is different from the average lot that can support this very large structure. There's extra, buffering by the natural vegetation or topography.
I just happen to have 20 Ferraris that I need to keep inside a garage.
Yeah. So you have the option of going to zoning hearing board and arguing your case.
You said,
Greg, one of the things I'm sorry.
You said residential, and like there's X's in IC1 and industrial.
Oh yeah, it does. Well, this is for residential uses. So if there are residences within IC1.
Like where I live.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Like, you're correct. This was in there in '86 when we built our big garage that's bigger than our house. And we went to zoning hearing board and none of our neighbors were there. And the zoning hearing board was like, what do we care?
Yeah, what do we care? If you don't have neighbors that
Nobody
care.
knows. They didn't even know we existed. So they were like, whatever. So that's why it's built the way it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And Greg, one thing we should incorporate, and I don't know where, we can talk about where to put it, but for agricultural uses, a lot of times they're on the books as residential. So somehow differentiating that, because agriculture uses have barns that are typically bigger than
And
houses. So
this section here, correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but 35042A.
you want me to look that up?
Yeah. What is 35042? Just give me the title of 35042. Okay, it is general provision, so it does apply everywhere. Two of them are 35042A, accessory uses and structures. So that's 35042A. So that applies globally. Okay. Yes, those have, yeah, those are under use schedules, yes. So accessory structures, this would actually apply to commercial as well.
Commercial recreation when there's no X?
Was what?
There's no X.
Yeah, we don't mess with Dorney Park. Dorney Park is a very odd site.
Right, but I don't know if they ever built it, the dorms, or
That wouldn't apply here.
not residential?
Well, it's not.
No, it's not. It's not a garage carport, or it's not an accessory building.
But if they wanted to build a garage next to it, or, I mean, they would do whatever Dorney does, but.
Yeah, that's our thing, because Dorney Park is such an odd creature. It's like, what is the primary use of Dorney Park? It's the.
And we only have one of them.
Yeah, we only have one of them. And, okay, so, a little shed that holds the little snowplow that plows the track for, this ride. That can go so far into the weeds and down a rabbit hole we don't want to go into. That's why it's not under CR.
Everything for Dorney would be basically ancillary to the use.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be, some things may not really be considered accessory. It would be ancillary to that large use.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when Grandma Plar lived in the house under the roller coaster.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll look at this with regard to barns and the like. Okay. Next up is 3. Let's talk about horses. Honest to God, didn't know what to do with horses. Are they pets? Are they farm animals?
Both.
Are they livestock? Yes, it's actually come up.
A lot, or
Enough.
enough to
Yeah,
be on your radar?
enough that somebody who lived out in the rural residential areas wanted a horse and we didn't know what to do with it. Honestly, if you're on like 2 acres, we couldn't call it agriculture because you need 5 acres for agriculture. We called it a pet. Well, the only pets that are permitted are dogs, cats, ferrets, Vietnamese pot-bellied pigs. Chickens are under their own section. And that's kind of similar to what we want to do here, is give horses their own section with their own rules. So that's what I did. I went out, I Googled, regulations on horses. There is a lovely horse owners association out there, national, that put out a model ordinance. So I took a lot of the information off of that. And then Laura, who's worked in Lehigh Township, which is middle of god-awful nowhere, where they still ride horses for transportation. So she helped me with some of the other stuff. So this is what we came up with. So this would be, I believe, it starts with subsection B, horses as pets. Subsection A is chickens as pets. So that tells you where this falls. So this tells you it's in the RR3, RR2, and RR zoning districts. It gives you minimum requirements for pasturing land and housing of horses. It gives you the pasture land requirements fencing, setback requirements, and of course the requirements for the buildings and fencing within. So we figured we'd give this a shot and see how this worked out. And of course, if we have issues, we can always come back and tweak them. But this is our first go at allowing horses to be pets in this township.
So Greg, did you check if this falls in alignment with like conservation district standards? Like animal,
It's the, it's not the CAFOs. I got that stuck in my head now.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
it actually goes by the state. It's the Department of Agriculture that limits the management nutrient plan.
There you go.
That deals with, you can have like certain pounds of live weight per acre. So with a horse, it's like 1,500 pounds of live weight per acre. And then anything over that, so that gives you like 1.5 horses.
Yeah,
So then anything over that, you would have to provide a nutrient management plan.
Yeah.
So what was holding us back here was that limit of that 5 acres. We couldn't get that friendly 1 or 2 horse on the area where they wanted it versus there was no gray. It was you're either stable or you're not.
And if you look at subsection B2, there is a note in there. The aforementioned minimum requirements may be superseded by an approved nutrient management plan. The applicant shall provide an approved nutrient management plan or confirmation that said plan is not required to the zoning officer upon request. So if they do come in with more than 1 horse, we're going to ask for that. And if that plan exceeds our requirements, then we will defer to the plan.
And who issues that?
This is a zoning permit.
No, the
Oh,
nutrient management plan.
DEP?
No, it would go to Lehigh County Conservation District.
Oh, okay.
The regulations they follow are through DEP.
Okay.
But they would
They're the
actually do the
enforcing
review.
agency.
Correct.
So we might want to spell that out in here. Just because if I'm a resident and I want to buy whatever, and I own horses and I'm moving in,
Mhm.
just so I know, so I'm not bothering you, even though that's what you get paid to be,
Bothered?
But, they might not know, if they're coming from Wyoming, they might not know what that is.
Oh,
or
true,
whatever.
yeah.
So
So they don't have rules out there. So yeah, we can say by an approved, maybe superseded by an approved nutrient management plan as reviewed by LCCD and applicable PA DEP regulations.
or whatever approving agency, because
Yeah.
they could change the name or something like that.
And we can add that. Yep, make it a little more clear. Other questions?
Because unless we're going to define what that.
Oh, God, no.
So,
No, and that's one of the things. I
I'd rather
don't want
push-
the zoning officer
I'd rather
becoming an
push them.
expert.
I'd
Yep.
rather push them to where they need to get the
Yep.
answer.
Let them go to the experts.
Are you talking about whether it's determined or not for what you can have on as far as the animal?
Yeah, well, that or
Okay,
what
because
is
that's where
required in a
that's where the
nutrient management
DEP
plan.
regulations come into the
Yeah.
plan that you were referring
Yeah.
to as far as the live weight
Yeah.
per acre.
We didn't want an applicant coming to you asking what those requirements are.
I don't mind telling them.
Oh, no,
And
no,
if
no,
it's in the
we don't
ordinance.
want you telling them. We
If
want-
it's in the ordinance, it's clear, and then I can tell them. And
Yeah,
that's
but-
what we're missing here.
Yeah,
So
the
it's
point
something we
is
could look at.
for you to direct them to DEP for those answers, not that you will be providing those answers.
DEP will direct them right back here.
Right,
Hey,
for what?
We can discuss this later. So we don't take up the time now.
Moving right along.
There-
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd say
11
discuss that.
Yeah, okay. All right, the next one is the one with audience participation. This is amending section 350-44C to correct the impervious lot coverage for residential use. This one caused a bit of a headache because right now, as you can see at the bottom of page 87, if you have up to 5,000 square foot of lot, you can have 100% impervious coverage on that. If you go between 5,000 and 10,000, you can have 75% impervious coverage. The problem is that if you have 5,000 square feet, you can have 5,000 square feet of impervious coverage. If you have 5,001 square feet, you're permitted a lot less. The chart goes like this. Yeah, it's not smooth. Yeah. So basically, depending upon where you are in your lot size, some next door neighbor with a smaller lot can be permitted more impervious surface than you can. And we never really had this problem until somebody brought us a big house.
Yeah, 100,000 square foot.
So we said, okay, we got to fix this. So we do want to smooth it so there are no jogs. It's going to be a clean progression, an increase. The question is, how do you want that to occur? One option is to simply flat across the board 75%. So whether you have a 5,000 square foot lot or a 12-acre lot, you are permitted by zoning to have 75%. Or if you choose a number, fine, choose a number. We'll enforce whatever you think. That is option. That is option 1. Actually, that's option 2. Option 1 is to remove it entirely. Get out of the impervious surface business. Just let LCCD handle it. I don't know if we want to do that. So option 1 is get rid of the standard entirely. We still do have the 75% maximum for non-residential uses. That is still in play. So item 2 is make all residential 75%. Item 3, and here's where we offer the options. Item 3 is to smooth it, allowing generally larger amounts of impervious surface as the lots go up. Option 4 is to smooth it and closely approximate what we had tried to do with the current chart. Item 5 is to smooth it but have a gradual reduction in your impervious surface. So as the lot sizes go up, for example, right now, if you're at exactly 1 acre, you're at 50% lot coverage is allowed. If you're between 1 and 5 acres, it's 25%. So this option 5 would give you less as a maximum impervious surface as your lot sizes go up.
Can we do an option 6 where it's by zone?
I don't know if you want to go there.
Why?
Because the zone, I don't think helps you, because you can be in an R10 zone and have a 12-acre lot. Right. You can be in an RR3 zone and have a quarter-acre lot.
Right. So the RR3 zone could be a higher impervious percentage than the RR zone.
Now, what would be the determinant? Percent lot?
The zone.
But what does the zone determine? Is what I'm saying. Is it a percentage of your lot coverage?
Yes.
Okay.
Percentage of lot, percent impervious for your lot.
The problem with that is, what would you do for RR3? A higher or lower?
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Well, this is my point. If you have an RR3, which is generally, the standard is 120,000 square foot minimum. That's right. 3 acres. Generally, you don't want 90% lot coverage.
No,
available.
you go right.
But
you go lower.
Watch when you say that, because I remember going back to that guy that wanted to build 100,000 square foot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could have subdivided that into 8 lots and 8 lots of 75% coverage.
Exactly.
And had way more impervious area than what he was actually asking for.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have to be careful what you're going to punish somebody because they have a 5-acre lot, but let's turn around and put three houses on here.
And we're not trying to do that. But the typical thing is, the smaller the lot, the higher percentage of impervious coverage you're going to get, simply because you're trying to put, like you said, 8 acres. If it's one house, you're generally not going to get 75% lot coverage off of one house.
Well,
but if you give them,
that would be a little insane.
But if you divide that up into 8 lots of 1 acre each, you're going to have a higher percentage, because now you have 8 houses. It's just how development works. So we do acknowledge that, yes, that 8-acre lot should be permitted a nice size house. That's no problem. The problem is, what is the cap on the impervious coverage that you want? So if you want to go that way, you can do one of two things: either get out of the business entirely.
But also remember, if you have an 8-acre lot and just say, I'm going to disturb more than an acre, I'm now into conservation district.
Exactly. And
maybe
that,
there's an out to write in that maybe once you exceed.
and that's actually what item 6 is trying to get to as well.
Okay.
Item 6 is an add-on. It's not dealing with percentages of lot coverage. This is an add-on. If you want to exceed the above, you should do it as a special exception, go to the zoning hearing board and let them attach any conditions to it. So it gives you that option. A special exception is a permitted use. So if that provision was in there,
right,
he could have avoided a variance. He could have just gone into the zoning hearing board and said, special exception, what do I need to get this? You know?
Okay, that's nice. I mean,
So
option 4 pretty much follows what the intent of the zoning was.
yeah,
smooths
it follows
out.
the intent. It just smooths it.
So my opinion, and this is only mine, is option 4, and then 6 is the add-on to allow the special exception.
Yeah.
what is it? 3 was just a little bit less restrictive than 4.
Yeah, 3 allowed the percentages to go up
For the
in
smaller
excess of
lots.
what the current.
Or what the smaller
is.
lots are.
Yeah.
Reasonable too, because if you have a smaller lot,
You're in a townhouse lot or one of these
it's
twins and, you know,
Yeah.
put a little pool. Whatever it might be.
Three's, I
It could
believe,
get squeezed pretty
It
quick.
could get squeezed. Now I do want to bring something up. Laura did suggest this. She felt that 100% is a bit steep, even for the 5,000 square foot lot. So we'd have no problem with dropping that to 90, 85, 80%. We just want to be careful because, like you said, when you have a townhouse lot of 2,800 square feet, at some point to put the townhouse on there does occupy a significant portion of the lot.
yeah.
So
A townhouse.
Yeah.
A lot of townhouses don't have a
I
backyard.
don't know
It's
that they,
very small.
yeah, I don't know that
live
they
in a
ever
townhouse.
truly get to 100%, but even then, if the guy wanted to put a small shed or a deck box in the grass, I mean, at that point, it'd be, exceeded the numbers. So,
And the thing is,
100%
if you do incorporate item 6 into it, that still allows him the special exception to exceed that.
So, yeah, if the 5,000 square foot lot becomes a 90% number,
90% number. Yeah, I think
anybody would argue with
we
that.
could do that. That's
as
no
opposed
problem.
to 100%.
I don't really want to do this, but
We're doing it anyway.
we've had this conversation because as much as per zoning, you can do a certain impervious cover. All of the stormwater management facilities are designed for a certain cover, and they're normally not designed for maximum impervious. No developer out there is really at this point doing a lot with a maximum amount of impervious cover based upon zoning and putting that into their basin. Usually they are, 25, 30% maybe is about what you're getting. You're getting maybe the house driveway plus 300 square foot, 400 square foot, depending on the lot size.
Mm-hmm.
And as all these things have transpired, what's happening is these people are putting in their pools in their backyard, the sheds, pools, and then you have the pool house with the patio. And we are finding that the basins are getting exceeding capacity. As we move forward, we're requiring, and the conservation district kind of does this too, is that they require a maximum amount of impervious cover designed for the lot to be put on a recorded plan. So we've asked for it in some of the developments we have, some of the residential that's Ridge Farm that's coming through, our comments in there says, put your maximum allowed impervious coverage on the plan that you designed for. We check it, gets recorded, and then that's what they're stuck with, because if everyone in development goes and builds 75%, the basin's not big enough.
Yeah.
So it's.
But we have control of now.
Recorded, though.
Yes.
So it's a written document that.
Goes to the property owner.
Yeah,
And if they want to increase it, they actually have to go for a minor modification to Lehigh County Conservation District.
Correct. If the permit's completely closed out, I mean, luckily, there's an individual lot grading process in the ordinance. It can, we've talked about this a few times, that here's your number, here's where you're at. and then they can decide, the township and everyone can decide what's next. Two options, either you say too bad, or you say put in your own stormwater management system on lot to manage it. Now that kind of trips into the problem of now the township has 200 pocket MS4 infiltration beds that they have to report and not maintain, but they're on the hook for. It's the township's required to make sure that everyone's individual basin's working. So there's a lot more stormwater that's going into this that usually it, I don't want to say outweighs, but usually has more
Yeah.
tighter
So-
restrictions.
So there'd be like a
Yes.
line item in your thing that basically says, unless you live on a lot that already has a predetermined amount of impervious square footage or square impervious coverage that you're allowed by your deed or your title search. I mean, I think did over in Winchester, 4,500 square lot,
Correct. Yeah, there's a chart on that one.
20,000 square foot lots. Maybe it was even 6,500. I thought that was.
Yeah, and usually it really depends on what houses you're thinking about putting on there, and then they try and estimate a couple 100 feet just in case for a deck, and
Yeah.
it usually doesn't fit everything that people want to do, unfortunately, but that's.
No, we've had a house that has what, 3 minor mods on the lot so far?
5.
Yeah.
So can you work with Tony to come
Well,
up with?
actually, yes, but what he's talking about is more a saldo issue. However, this does factor in because one of the things we discussed was in saldo requiring a developer to design their stormwater management to fit the maximum impervious surface in zoning. Because right now it's 2 different things. LCCD is taking care of stormwater, and their requirements don't match zoning ordinance. Zoning ordinance is simply, well, as you see, flat percentages of square foot, percentage of lot coverage. We kind of, I mean, we're still discussing this, but it's one of the options we're looking at is getting the 2 to work together a little more closely. So that is a saldo issue. Like I said, we're reviewing that, and we may bring that before you sometime in the future. But right now, this is to address a clear problem with how the table is structured. So as
If the developer is not proposing that maximum impervious, then don't the record plan say the maximum impervious is what's designed, and then if they included some extra 400 square feet, and then it's on the record plan, and then they can't do more than it, even if zoning allows, it's on the record plan.
Right, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. The 2 aren't working together. These are 2 different standards enforced by different organizations to meet different goals. We would like the 2 to be a little more compatible with each other.
Yeah, and property owners don't always know what's on the record plan.
Yeah, they sign a
big
lot of
issue
things at
for us.
closing. And I hate to say it, we had somebody come in and say, none of this stuff came up at title search. He's kind of right. So he found out when he signed papers, and it's like, well, what is this? And then he found out, and he said, oh my God, if I had known, I wouldn't have purchased this lot. And we're hearing that more and more. Somebody basically sold the lot because they exceeded the regulations.
So this
and
has
just
happened more than just the guy with the big house.
Oh yeah. This is a lot of moving pieces. This is just one part that is moving. So we want to start with this one, get a good concept, and then we're going to start addressing the other pieces in a more holistic approach. But like I said, this one is the start because it fixes a clear and present problem in the zoning ordinance. And if you add item 6 in, it gives an out. It gives a release. So.
And every township is dealing with this, and the multiple townships we're in, every single zoning officer is fighting this battle that people are buying homes, especially new homes, and signing and closing. They say, all right, here's my pool permit. And they say, nope, you don't have enough. And people are upset, understandably, because they were only allotted this. They bought this nice half-acre property, thought I could put a pool. This is my dream, and denied. And it's everywhere. It's every
You're adding-
development.
You're adding expense, you're adding a lot of time. Yeah, and people don't know what they're walking into.
This reminds me of the townhouses where they had a walkout patio, but they couldn't build a porch.
Building restriction line was the back wall.
A question and a point. So the point first, I think, based on all the conversation, is we should just make sure that we're careful that we're not providing an interpretation in the zoning that something may be allowed when it's going to be contradictory to what conservation district is going to imply.
Well, that already exists. And as I said, these are two different agencies enforcing two different sets of rules to meet two different issues.
But then a question, kind of back to what Tony was saying, maybe not on a new construction where there's a restriction tied to the deed, but I've heard the same scenario where people are having to put in dry wells for on-lot stormwater, a dry well, dry basin.
Yep.
Is that, but that one, I mean, if that's subterranean underground, is that still an MS4 thing that the township has to monitor?
Yes, because if, in theory, if the dry well would fail, or then they would be discharging more stormwater than it's allowed off their property. So yes.
It seems like there's a lot of discussion that still needs to be done with this.
Well, and some of
we
this.
have another month to maybe
Yeah,
provide
well,
feedback.
and also a lot of this discussion that Tony has brought up is a saldo-related discussion. It's not a zoning-related discussion. So the zoning will mesh with it, but I would rather have the saldo be altered to mesh better.
Yeah. Do you think we're at a good stopping point? We've got through.
Pick up right there.
Sure.
We only have one agenda item.
We got 5 and 15, yeah. Got 11 left. But I think this was the big one to think on because I offered you like 6 different choices. So the rest should go much easier. Okay, thank you.
Transportation.
Tony.
Tony.
I'll be very quick. The report we have is that there's a traffic signal technologies grant that the township's looking into. It's actually what it does is it gives money to existing traffic signals to upgrade their systems. We're actually looking at the intersection of Hamilton and Lincoln. What that signal would do is it'd be able to see different types of patterns. So if normally Dorney Park lets out at 9 o'clock and the signal's time for a big 9 o'clock flush, it starts raining at 7 o'clock and everyone leaves, that signal will pick up the extra cues and be able to adjust their timing to help that situation. That's what the grant's going for. That's what Township's filing the pre-application in the next week or so. We'll see what happens.
Play up the Dorney Park angle.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Great. Courtesy of the floor, there's no one, residents in the audience? Is there anyone online that has any comments on anything? Oh, all right. Agenda item number 9. Does anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.